Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to be talking about tomatoes, and we're going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent, and he's going to tell us more about those tomatoes. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're going to be talking about tomatoes, and we're going to be making a tomato pasta salad, and it's really, really good. And so let's talk about tomatoes. You know, people say, is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? I always say it's a vegetable, but really in terms as if it's cultivated, it could be a fruit. You know, if it's botanical, it's a fruit, you know, so either way. But cultivating, I call it a vegetable. Botanical, you call it a fruit, but together it is also a berry. And the reason why it's a berry because it doesn't have a hard core seed in it. It has a seed with lots of seeds in it, so that's the reason why we call it a berry. So tomatoes, either way, whatever you want to call them, but I'm going to call them a vegetable because I love tomatoes. But you know what? No matter what, they're delicious and nutritious. So let's talk about the nutritious part of it. Tomatoes are very, very high in vitamin C. So you think about an orange, you know, you could take a large tomato and eat it just like an orange and get a lot of good vitamin C that we need for our body. It also has a lot of good vitamin A in it. It is, we know that it is low in cholesterol. It is also low in saturated fat, and it's low in sodium. So altogether, a tomato is a wonderful thing to eat. It also has a little bit of potassium in it, and about a medium tomato is about 30 calories. So you could eat a lot of tomatoes for 30 calories to add up. So just remember, it's really, really nutritious for us. And if you're looking for another alternative besides eating an orange, eat that tomato and get that vitamin C. Now, when you're selecting those tomatoes, even in your garden or your grocery store, make sure you're looking for shiny tomatoes. So you want to make sure they're shiny. You also want to make sure they don't have any bruises, any bad places on them, because they're not going to be as good, and you can cut it off, but you want to look for really good ones if you're buying it from the grocery store, especially if you're spending your own money. In your garden, you can kind of pick and choose too when you're getting ready to pick your tomatoes. Also, one good key to me about tomatoes is don't put them in the refrigerator when you get them. Take them and put them on your counter unless they're just too ripe from a garden and you want to prolong a little bit, put it in your refrigerator. But when you put it in your refrigerator right when you come home from a grocery store, it takes away from the taste of that good tomato. It makes it more of a bland, you just don't get that spunky taste of a tomato. So just keep that in mind. Now, you can leave it out on your counter, but if you feel like it's going to go bad, put it in the refrigerator to prolong it, and depending on what you're going to use. So just remember, looking for your tomatoes in your garden, that's your prolonging, and you can tell when you pick them. Now, if you pick them and they're a little green, you can put them out of the sunlight. You want to keep the tomatoes out of the sunlight too, but you can put them out, and they will ripen as they are out there on your counter. But tomatoes also, they freeze wonderfully. We are still eating tomatoes from our garden from last year that we froze, and we're making just different things with them. So as that garden starts coming in and you're getting those tomatoes, make sure that you're figuring out how you're going to keep those tomatoes where you can eat them all year long. And that means canning or freezing, whatever you want to do. But just keep that in mind when you're purchasing those tomatoes, or if you get a big box from a friend across the street that brings you, and we try to share our tomatoes with our neighbors too, so we want to make sure they are eating some of our good tomatoes if they don't have any also. So share your tomatoes, because when they come in, I can tell you, it is really hard to get them put up as fast as they're coming in. So when we see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights, you're going to hear from Frank. He's going to tell you more about those tomatoes, and we're going to be making that pasta salad with tomatoes. We'll see you back in just a little bit.
Okay, today we're going to talk about getting our tomato plants planted. we're doing it a couple of different ways here. We've got some that we have planted in the ground. We took these plants and we dug a big hole, and we filled that hole up with 1/4 of our topsoil, 1/4 vermiculite, 1/4 sphagnum peat moss, and 1/4 composted manure. We mixed that up and we filled the hole so that our tomatoes would have a good place to grow. After we planted the plants, which we planted them deep, these plants are in at least half of their height into the ground, because tomato plants can be planted deep and they will root along the stem, get a better root system developed. So after we got our plants in here and planted, we got here and we took some newspaper and we went down the whole row, laid out about 2 thicknesses of newspaper thick down through here to help control. It's going to help control moisture, and it's also going to help control our weed issues. Then we came in here with some wood chips and came over top of the newspaper just to anchor the newspaper down in place. So we've got this row mulch using newspaper, and we don't expect to see any weeds coming up in here. So our plants should be happy. We've got cages for them to grow in. These are indeterminate plants we've got planted here, so they're going to grow tall. So we put them down here in the soil. We've also covered them up just to protect them from heavy rainfall, any hailstorms we might have or anything. And once the plants get started growing, we probably take this off and let these indeterminate plants grow on up through the top here, which is what they like to do. So this is one structure. We've tied our structure here so the wind can't be blowing our cages around. This is going to stay here and be pretty substantial. We stapled this material to the wire, and then we come back. We'll look at our other design here. We'll come back over the top of this and we'll tie it in place too, so the wind can't blow it off. And this is what we're doing just to see if we can keep these plants happy and grow some heirloom tomatoes. These are heirlooms. They're not very disease resistant, so we're trying to make our environment as good as we can to grow them without any disease issues. So we'll report back later with a tomato sandwich, and we'll see if anything works. So that's kind of where we are on this one. Last time, if you remember, we talked about making some buckets, some containers that we could grow tomatoes in. We're growing some determinate tomatoes, and we've got them set up over here in the buckets. We've got the milk jugs set there to catch the water that runs through, so that we recapture our nutrients that may be lost due to the water leaching them out. We can, if we move right over here, we can take a look at one of these buckets. As you remember from last time, we keep about 2.5 inches of water in the bottom of this bucket here that runs through, that gives the plant an opportunity for the roots to go down through and have a good reservoir of water, so that we can keep our water under control, so we don't have to water it every day. Or I've got a water meter here, a moisture meter that we use just to kind of keep up with when we need to water it again. This is not a very expensive meter, but it's accurate enough to tell us the difference between when it's dry and when it's wet. So that's kind of what we use. The tomatoes need to have a steady moisture level. They don't need to be dried out. They don't need to be too wet. So we're trying to control that. by having the cover over the top, keeping the rain off of them, that kind of puts us in control of the watering. So I can maintain the proper water levels in these buckets because I'm keeping the rain off of them, and I'm measuring it, and I'm also capturing some in the bottom. So we'll see how this goes. These are determinate plants. These are also hybrids here that produce pretty good tomatoes and a little bit more disease resistant. So we'll see how all that works out as we go along. Again, we use the tomato cages. We took a half a tomato cage to make our top with. We covered our top, and then we tie our material in place. This particular one is white plastic. This particular one on this side over here is landscape fabric. We'll just see if it makes any difference. The main thing we're trying to do is keep heavy rainfall off of them, and any hailstorms that come along during the season are also going to be prevented from beating our plants up too much. So that's what we got going on here. But now I think we're ready to go inside and see what Susan is fixing.
Today we're going to be talking about tomatoes, and we're going to be making a tomato pasta salad. And so what I want to start with before we mix anything together is we're going to start with our tomatoes. And the recipe is going to call for about a cup of cherry tomatoes, and it's going to tell you to quarter those tomatoes. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now, because everything else I get to go ahead and put together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my cherry tomatoes. And I talked earlier about tomatoes as far as, is it a fruit or a vegetable? You know, what I do like about tomatoes is they're so versatile. You can eat them in a salad, but you can also cook with them. This is going to get a lot of good juice. You can cook on the grill with them. They're just such a good vegetable that we can add to a lot of our meals. So my father-in-law will tell you this. I never have a problem with it, but some people, when they eat too many tomatoes, they break out. But our tomatoes are not as acidic as they used to be. And so when we're even canning our tomatoes, we recommend, I should say, that you add a little bit of lemon juice to it, because they're not as acidic as they used to be. And that just makes them give that acidity back to them, and it also just makes them a little bit safer when we're doing the canning part of it. And another good thing about tomatoes when we're canning, you can do it in a water bath. You don't have to use a pressure canner, so that to me is even better. You don't have to heat the house up as much. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what you want to do with those tomatoes. And one thing I really liked with tomatoes is making salsa. So I will tell you, I'm already looking forward to making that salsa this summer. Ooh, I just pushed that little juice all over the place. You could have these, but I really want to quarter those, and the reason why is I want them to be smaller, so when people are eating the salad, they're getting a nice bite size. You could even slice them if you wanted to. You don't have to quarter them like I'm doing now. You could slice them if you want to. But I'm just trying to make sure when people eat the salad, and you know your family better than I do, so you just, however you want to prepare it is up to you. Got a couple more. And this is about a cup is what it's going to be. So, and I also counted them out just so you know. It's about 22 to 23 tomatoes, depending on the size, is what's going to give you that about a cup is what you're going to look for. So when you're picking your tomatoes or you're buying them, you know, more than likely you're going to be able to get the container whatever size you need. So just keep that in mind. Got a couple more to go. And also, very, very important, we know tomatoes have to be washed, and these tomatoes have been washed, so make sure that you wash your tomatoes. So let's get just a little bit more. And these are going to be tasty. They're very juicy, I can tell you that for sure. And when you're wearing a shirt, make sure you wear the same color as the tomato, then people can't see if you got tomato juice on your shirt. Do some more. Oh, I just think I got it on myself this time. Do a couple more, and that should be close to my cup to what I'm looking for. Make sure you have a sharp knife too. It does help when you're cutting to make sure you have a sharp knife. I think I'm gonna do one more. And we're about to start the recipe. So I have about a cup of tomatoes there, and I'm gonna dry my hands off just a little bit. So you got about a cup of tomatoes, and in the recipe it's gonna tell you to quarter them. And like I said, you can do whatever you want to on that part of it. I think I'm just gonna pick the whole cutting board because I really wanna keep some of the juice in there also, and I just about didn't make it all in there. So we're just gonna get a little bit of that juice from that tomato in there. And then we're going to start the rest of the recipe. The recipe is going to tell you need about a cup of the soft mozzarella cheese. So make sure it's not the hard, make sure it's soft. And when I say soft, you can see this is very spongy, and it's going to tell you to cube it. Now I've cubed it in smaller chunks because I just want everything to be really easy for people to taste. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump those in there. Also, we're going to, and I'm going to move this over here also just for a little bit. We're going to need about a small can of sliced olives, and you want to drain those, and you're going to add those. So this is going to be really colorful and really tasty. Then we're going to add some more cheese. We're going to add, this is Parmesan cheese, and this is a half a cup grated Parmesan cheese, so we're going to add that. And also, you're going to add some basil leaves. Now, these are about 5 basil leaves that I've already kind of chopped up. But if you like basil, and this is fresh basil, it came out of my garden actually this morning. If you want more basil, please add more to it. But I will just tell you, depending on what you like, you want to kind of add as you go. But you could even add up to a cup of basil if you really wanted to. And it's going to just add some really nice color to it. I'm going to move this around now. We're just going to toss this together and mix in that good cheese. Then we're going to make a little dressing to go on top of it. The pasta is already cooked, and I used, I guess the bow tie is what we call it. You could use any pasta, and this is a 12-ounce box of pasta that we're using. And you can see this is going to serve about 10 people. So just keep this in mind when you're making it. However many people you need to make it for, you will know that about a 12-ounce box is going to make for about 10 people. So we've got that mixed up. And I can see the basil mixed in with it. And then we're going to mix a little dressing to go with it. So I think we got that all mixed up. I'm going to slide this just here, and I'm going to move my cutting board to the side just a little bit to mix up my other parts of it. So we have 1/4 of a cup of olive oil, and this is just going to coat that pasta. It also keeps it from sticking too. And when you're doing that pasta, once you finish the pasta, make sure you rinse it with a little bit of cool water because that keeps it from sticking. Or if you really want to go a little bit further, you could mix a little bit of olive oil with the pasta and mix it around before you start your recipe, and that'll keep it from sticking also. And then this is 1 lemon, so we're going to add 1 lemon that has been squeezed out as far as the juice goes. We're going to add that to our olive oil. And then this is 2 cloves of garlic that are minced, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to it also. We'll use this same little spatula right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just whisk this around. Let's see if I can get that in there. So I'm going to just whisk this around. I want to make sure the oil and the lemon juice and the garlic is mixed in really good. So I'm just going to whisk this around. You know, till you get it blended up really well is what you're looking for. The lemon juice and the oil mix really well together. So then you're going to just pour this across that pasta salad. I want to make sure I get all of it. And then I'm just going to take it and toss it. And this will just give it a little extra taste to the pasta. The lemon juice will just give a little lemon taste to it. It also, the good thing about lemon juice, the acidity from that lemon juice, it will keep those tomatoes looking really good, adding it to that. So that's a good thing about the pasta salad, is that acidity to it will keep all your, whatever you put in that pasta salad, it'll keep it looking really, really good. So we just about have this all mixed up, and this was so simple, and if you could smell it, it smells really, really good. I can smell the basil in it. And of course, I love cheese, so I'm looking forward to trying this, and I know you will too. So when we come back, we'll have Frank come back and we'll talk about a little bit more about this tomato pasta salad. We have Frank with us, and today we're going to be tasting that tomato pasta salad. But Frank, one thing I need to do before I finished up my recipe, I've got to add just a little bit of cracked pepper to it.
I was going to mention that. I noticed there wasn't any pepper in it when I walked up.
You did. It just adds a little color to it, so we got to add a little color to it. And I like pepper. Of course, if I put it on my plate, I'd probably add more pepper, but that's okay.
You know, if we're going to talk about tomatoes, we've got to mention Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson, because he's responsible for all of this. You know, when tomatoes first came here, people thought they were poison because of their resemblance to the nightshade family. In fact, they're in the nightshade family, and that's poison, so they thought tomatoes were poison. So they grew them as a ornamental plant, and they wouldn't eat them in this country. So Colonel Johnson, who was a colonel in the New Jersey militia, he stood on the courthouse steps in Salem, New Jersey, and ate a basket full of tomatoes. And they had the fire department band was there playing funeral music.
Oh my goodness.
He was dressed all in black, and his doctor was there describing how he was going to be foaming at the mouth and dying from eating all these tomatoes. And about 2,000 people gathered around, and he didn't die.
So they figured a tomato's something good to eat.
I mean, he did die, but about 30 years later. You know,
That's a good thing.
This was in about 1820 that he was doing this on the courthouse square.
Very interesting.
And so after that, the farmers started growing tomatoes, and so he's really responsible for the whole thing. So I thought we should mention him.
It's a very good point. Very good point. Very good point. Well, this is our tomato pasta salad. I'm gonna mix it just a little bit with this peppers on top, so you don't get just straight pepper tasting pasta. And let's see if I can get you a good spoonful out. Got a lot of good cheese in it. You want one little more? Give you some tomatoes.
I'm ready.
I see the pepper on it. That is good, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Now to add the pepper to it. The pasta's tender and
That's just right.
tomatoes really make it. Really are good and tasty too. Easy to eat. Of course, I love my cheese, so the cheese is even better in the pasta.
We're trying to grow some tomatoes, you know, out back. We're
I know.
trying to get where some of these homeowners can get their tomatoes to do good.
I think that's awesome what you're doing, and I hope that they're going to learn some good information on how to plant those tomatoes too.
We'll find out. If they do good, we'll take a picture of them next month. If they don't, we'll talk about something else.
That sounds great. Sounds great. Well, I know that you're going to want to put this on your recipe list. It's a great summertime, not too heavy, just as a meal, just like it is. If you want to add some chicken or something to it, you could even add that if you want a little bit more protein to it. But check out our website and you can see this recipe and add it to your list. And Frank and I will see you next time on Garden Delights.